protester right after she was shot has been reproduced to become one of the defining images of the civil disobedience movement opposing military rule. Her death in hospital, where she'd been kept on life support for 10 days, will provide further fuel for the wave of public anger which has followed the coup. Video of the moment she was shot during a protest in the capital Naypyidaw shows her standing some distance from the police and starting to walk away. 2 other protesters were also hit by live rounds on the same day.
The Malaysian independent news site Malaysia Kini says it's raised enough money to cover a hefty fine imposed on it by a federal court in a verdict seen as a test for press freedom. The site thanked its readers for their support. The court found the news site guilty of contempt because its readers' comments online were considered to be offensive to the judiciary. The Dutch Senate is debating a law hastily drafted to preserve a nationwide coronavirus curfew in the Netherlands. Riots broke out in protests at its imposition last month. BBC News.
This is the real story.
天天用心听，听见台北的声音。FM 93.1幸福永远属于你。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家？你当家？我当家？到底谁当家？你来当家。
Welcome to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Our 2 very special guests today are young and promising musicians here in Taipei. Li Qi-Ray, and I'm going to try and pronounce it correctly because my Portuguese is not very good. Nuno Azevedo.
Oh, that's perfect.
Well thank you. And you also have a new Chinese name as well.
Yes,裴樂飛.
裴樂飛. Okay. So people could Google your names and find out more about your upcoming performances, but we'll talk about that in some more detail a little later. But first, Li Qi-Ray, Lee, tell us about your background, which part of Taipei you grew up in.
So actually, I grew up in the northeastern part of Taipei. As we know, Taipei is surrounded by mountains. So actually, I grew up in the mountains, but I received my education mainly in a city.
Oh, you grew up in mountains. I'm starting to think of like the sound of music. Like you heard the mountains were just singing to you, and is that why you became a musician?
Well, that's partly the reason, but actually that's exactly the case. When I was growing up practicing at home, the frogs actually do sing with my practice.
And you kissed a frog and it turned into your prince here? Who's your
yeah, here he is.
Actually, your father is a writer.
Yeah.
A well-known writer, in fact. Did you think of following his footsteps and becoming a writer? Or you always wanted to do something different and that's why you became a musician?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to do something different. I was quite a stubborn child, I think. It was not because I had something against being a writer, but rather more finding my own interest. And also I found music from an early age.
Were there certain types of music from an early age that you were exposed to or developing an interest in?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we lived in the mountains, so it's quite far away from the city, but we always needed to commute. And in a car, my parents would always have some classical music on in a car during the long commuting time.
Western classical music or Chinese classical music?
Oh, Western classical music, basically what I play right now. And yeah.
So if your parents have been playing rock music or dance music, you might have gone into those?
Probably, because my early education was really, really broad and versatile. I had many different lessons to develop my interest, and music being one of them, dance as well. But also with classical music, we needed to start very, very early to develop those skills. So music found me, or I found music already very early.
Nuno, could you say the same about yourself, that music found you at an early age?
Well, opposite of Ellen, I didn't have my parents putting classic music for me, so I was the first musician in the family, and music came to me as in the elementary school when I had the contact with recorder, these plastic ones, and we had this music experience, and I enjoyed so much.
For me, because I'll admit I don't know much about music. To me, a recorder is a flute. So just for those of us who don't know the difference,
Recorder is very easy to play, so it's just a little blow and comes out sound. So it's mainly to introduce classic music or music, generally speaking, to children that are in the elementary school. So that was my first contact, and I remember that I arrived home and I told my parents I want to study music, and they were of course very scared. They didn't want that for me. So
well, they thought you'd be a struggling musician on the streets of Europe playing a guitar,
yeah, probably.
You know, getting a few coins here and there.
Probably was what I imagined, but so I was very stubborn also, and eventually I found saxophone, and then came the bassoon.
The bassoon, which also is an instrument I think a lot of people might not be familiar with. If you showed them a photo of a bassoon, people might not be able to say that's a bassoon.
Yeah, sure. That even in Germany, the country where I perform the most, I get a lot of feedback of people that don't know really what's the sound of the instrument. So they get sometimes the first contact with the instrument, and they are very surprised how it sounds. And that's very pleasant for me, of course.
Was there a specific teacher who inspired an interest in saxophone or bassoon for you?
Well, I wanted to go for music, so I didn't know anything. I didn't know even what was a saxophone. So my parents found this music school, and they put me in saxophone. And for me, I was very curious to see what is a saxophone, you know. So, and then I got a good teacher at the time, and of course, the first time I heard an orchestra, and I couldn't find the saxophone there. So, and I knew that I wanted to play there in the orchestra. So then I tried to find another school. My parents tried to find another school, and I think I would say that the bassoon chose me. It was not really me choosing the bassoon.
It sounds like what we often hear with football players. You say, why'd you become a goalie? They say, well, no one else wanted to play the position. I just stood there and got hit by the ball for a while. Is the bassoon more challenging for younger people to learn how to play compared to some other instruments?
I would say, actually, it's a quite heavy instrument, so you need to play with a strap because it's heavy for just to use the hands, and it's also quite big. So for a small children to start in the bassoon is quite a challenge. So
you have to go to the gym as well in order to be able to carry the bassoon.
That's why you can see these big muscles.
Too bad we're on radio. You know. So, Elle, you went abroad at a pretty young age. Why did you do that?
So that was around middle school. I was in the second grade of the middle school, and in Taiwan, in a educational system, in the third year of your middle school is the time you prepare, you fully dedicate yourself for the next examination for the high school. And I didn't quite agree with the plan they had laid out for us for the whole year of memorizing. But that's not the only reason. Also, I didn't make the decision until I really went there to see Germany for myself. And that time when I went to the audition was the time that I actually made the decision, because I saw in the conservatory the atmosphere there. It's just so amazing that I've never seen before. Because
amazing in what kind of ways?
So what I saw at the time as a 14-year-old was, because the conservatory, the building itself, is consisted just of practicing rooms, nothing else. And I saw the students there practicing from morning till midnight, but they were just not just closed inside by themselves, but rather practicing for them was a social event. They also socialize in the breaks, because our school conservatory building has a big balcony, and I saw these students practicing and then meeting in the break leisurely and having a fun talk outside, perhaps smoking a cigarette. And
what 14-year-olds were smoking cigarettes?
No, conservatory.
You Europeans, you're pretty flexible.
Well, 14-year-old, I went to the pre-college, so that in the conservatory was mainly people probably 10 years older than me, than I was.
So, to be fair, they were happy. Yeah. They weren't being tortured into studying music in a conservatory.
No, it's not such a serious thing that you're forced by your teachers or your parents to do like they want, but rather a thing of active engagement, what they wanted to do.
And once you began this course of study at a conservatory in Germany, what did you discover was different about how the instructors teach, especially younger people, because you were still quite young at the time. What's different from their approach versus music instructors here in Taiwan?
I think I would say it in a bit of a general sense, since I
yes,
also
you want to be polite. You don't want to criticize the Taiwan teachers.
No, I don't want to focus just on the musical education, because I also went to the high school there. And I think the general difference is, one, students are required to be much more passive, and the other one more active. So in Taiwan, I feel like students are required to be more in the passive way. You listen, you sit in a lesson, you listen to the teachers tell you all about what you need to memorize, what you need to learn. But there in Germany, I cannot say for the whole Europe, but for Germany, I feel like they encourage students to be quite active, engaging in their ideas in the lessons. So for example, in the high school, the 40% of our grades count on participation, and that is actively sharing your ideas, be there that it doesn't make sense or whatever, but they are encouraged to do so. And the same in a musical education. Instead of being told what kind of interpretation to do, or what to feel, what to like, they are encouraged to find it by themselves.
Would you agree with that, since you are from Europe originally?
Yes.
Is that how you would characterize or describe musical education in Europe?
Sure. We have freedom also to search for the, for our personal idea. For example, also I studied also in Hanover, and even in Portugal I also felt that, but in Hanover even more, that our professors, they let us, they try to find what's the best way, what would work the best for me, and maybe differently for our colleagues. So I agree with Ellen, yes.
And what about what you've observed during your time in Taiwan? Would you also agree with Ellen, or is musical education here in Taiwan quite different from?
Well, I've been here since not more than a month, so it's something that I want to do in the future, to talk more with teachers, professors, students, to get in contact, know the community. But so far I cannot say it so well. Well, I've been also part extra of the performance. trying to help students that come mainly from Asia to do the entrance for the universities, and I feel I have to agree sometimes that. Yes, that's sometimes they need also to pursue this freedom, that they can also try to themselves.
To find their own interpretation.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, do you both anticipate making Taiwan your home base for a while? You're from Taiwan, so you're supposed to say like, oh yeah, I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. This is the greatest place on earth.
Well, for now, I still need to finish my studies, but I think also nowadays for musicians we are many. Frankly, we are more than what's needed. So it's very competitive.
You mean
field
here in Taiwan?
Right now. Generally speaking, the classical field, especially for my instrument, which is piano, and I think nowadays we cannot follow the traditional career path where we stay just artists without engaging in anything, that we wait for our manager to contact us for invitations. Nowadays I think we need to be very creative and very quick to see where can we contribute and how can we contribute other than just the playing.
Speaking of invitations and playing, tell us about some of your earliest recital experiences. The first time or the first few times you had to play in front of a large audience. What was that like?
Okay, my first recital, I was like 10 years old, but I think that doesn't count. I would say that the first time that was very, very serious was in Taichung, the National Theater, was in 2017. It was the first time I played a recital for such a big audience. And then after that, 2018 in Taipei, I think that was the biggest deal for me, because that was in a national concert hall, and that was where I hung out when I was little, to listen to all these great musicians from international or from Taiwan also. And was still a moment of, I couldn't believe that I'm playing here, and what am I really doing? Am I doing enough? And I also like to challenge myself with programs. So for that recital, I actually designed quite a challenging program. But in the end, I felt like I really learned a lot from that experience.
Did everything go as you anticipated? I don't mean necessarily your music, because you would have rehearsed and you were, I'm sure, well prepared. But what about things that might have been beyond your control, such as the lighting or the room temperature or when the audience clapped? Did things occur that were somewhat unexpected?
So I think the room temperature is always a problem in venues, because it's very big. So before the audience enter, they really have to put the temperature really low, which is not really good for us. We are sometimes partly athletes that we need to move in at ease. So that is somehow the more challenging part. But the reaction from the audience was actually beyond my expectation. They were much warmer than I thought they would be.
Well, you thought they'd be tough on a young pianist?
Yeah, I thought that was the impression I thought.
How about you, Nuno? Tell us about your first times performing in front of large audiences. Where was it? What was it like?
So I was around 12 years old. And for example, for us wind players in Portugal, we have a huge tradition of wind orchestras. So I started to play the bassoon, and after 6 months I was doing 30 concerts in the summer, but was mainly in ensemble. So we perform mainly in ensemble with other people.
Are those indoor or outdoor in the summer?
So indoor and outdoor. Mainly I would say outdoor, and it's really a tradition. So thousands of people come to listen to these wind orchestras. And I remembered my first one. We played the overture, I think, from Rossini, a transcription for wind band, and I was completely lost. My colleagues were playing and I couldn't really follow the score. So I remember that I had to turn the page, and I turned it too early. So my colleagues were getting mad at me. So that was my first performance.
How do you know they were getting mad at you? Did they try to make eyes or face at you?
Since I couldn't play, so I was mainly looking to their faces, and I could feel it.
but hopefully they understood that you were young. This was some of your first performances.
Of course.
What about moving on to larger venues, though? Europe, it's relatively easy to travel around, of course. And was it very quickly that you were moving on to other countries and other venues, ever larger venues?
Yeah. Sure, since early. So I was used to go to do competitions, not just alone, but also with wind orchestras, so to go into Netherlands, Spain, and countries around. And but for me, the biggest surprise was when I moved to Germany. Like in Portugal, people don't go so often to concerts, But in Germany, then you feel that almost every concert has full room, and of course it's pleasant when you can be on the stage, big stage, and then you see, room full. So that has been a great experience. Germany has been, very learnful.
I'm going to ask you a tough question, since you said you performed outside and you said the bassoon is kind of heavy to carry around. What do you prefer to wear when you're performing?
Usually just
like a tuxedo, or is that uncomfortable?
No, I like to feel comfortable in concerts. For example, for this concert, Ellen wanted me to play with a blazer, and I always like to feel free, even no tie, because I need to feel my throat in freedom.
You're not designing some elaborate, kind of like Liberace kind of sequence.
It's more of practical reasons. So this time we had a collaboration with a fashion designer, Applejan, and I was trying to find a tie for Nuno, and he was like, no, they are super beautiful, but no, I need to be comfortable. That's very important.
And what do you guys typically do to relax in say, the hour before you go out and perform before a large audience? Do you have any special habits? For example, you like to drink a specific kind of soda or other kind of, glass of tea. You want to have a special candy bar. You don't want to be bothered. What do you like to do to get into the right mood before you perform?
So for me, usually it's 2 glasses of whiskey. No, just kidding. So I have the.
Why stop at 2? You might as well have 4 or 5.
No. Actually, a lot of Russian musicians do that.
I even met some people that drink Red Bull, couple of Red Bulls before the concert. For me, what works, my tradition is to eat couple of bananas. So the day of the concert, I don't like to play so much, so I keep it easy. So before the concert, I eat a couple of bananas, I do 10 minutes of meditation, a nice warm-up, so warming up the muscles together with the bassoon, lip muscles, in front of a mirror, and I look to myself and I try to tell positive things, how handsome I am, and of course lies, but just before the concert.
But it usually works.
Usually it works.
How about you, Al? What do you do to either unwind or to warm up before you perform?
Well, warm up many hours before definitely is important for me.
Many hours?
Yeah, I mean, I will leave some time for relaxation right before. That also includes meditation, and also some kind of mental training that is like visualization of how I want to appear and how I wanted everything to more or less turn out. And I find also very useful is actually our body, the posture of our body really affect the way we feel. At least for me, I cannot speak for anyone else other than myself, but I do feel, and many researchers also back this up, so I always try to put my shoulders back. Sometimes if I have time also in front of the mirror. Anyway, for us, we always stay a long time in front of the mirror for the makeup artist to do everything, to perfect everything in our face. So I try to also correct my posture and do some mental imaginations and meditations as well.
And it usually works?
Yes, most part of the time.
Well, you have some times it didn't work.
Yeah, unfortunately, not every time will turn out exactly as I want. This is a norm.
Ellen mentioned she puts on makeup. Is that common for male performers as well?
I've never done it. So this face is what
that's what the audience will see. Let's talk a little bit about your upcoming performance. It has a interesting name. There's two kinds of names. Well, Ellen, why don't you tell us about the names in English and in Mandarin?
So in Mandarin, it's called. So the whole series is called 时光命题. That is a title of a poet that recently passed away, Yang Mu. But then we have two series of program, and we will play these two programs in Taipei, Taichung, and Kaohsiung. So the first series of program is called 彷徨时代.
And what does that mean?
So I think what I really wanted to say is music in uncertain times. So the
I can imagine what's uncertain about the times now.
Right now, right, and also
just about everything is.
And also 100 years ago. So we chose the program mainly consist of European music from the early half of the 20th century, and these composers, they actually lived also through the late 19th century. So it was a time of instability and in many aspects, but also in music that in this time that after the late Romantic period in the late 19th century, a lot of classical music theory were being eliminated. So suddenly, beyond this music, beyond those rules, were much more explored, and suddenly there are much more possibilities in music. And I chose different style of these composers trying to find and invent their own musical language, and we can see also the differences between their musical languages. So, for example, in that 彷徨时代, in the first series of the concert, we have two French composers. For example, one is Claude Debussy. He thought, why do we have so many systems in the music, and why don't we instead focus on I'm putting it very simply, that why don't we focus on the pure aesthetic of the music? But then on the other hand, it's the piece of the bassoon sonata from Camille Saint-Saëns. He had a completely different idea, didn't he?
Yes, he had more form. So his inspiration was the classic era. So it contrasts with the first half of the concert.
Is this a contrast or a clash between the styles and the composers?
You could also call it a clash, I think, because they were at the same period, at the same time, at the same city, in Paris. They lived both in Paris.
Yeah. So one more traditional in clash with
a radical, if you can call it.
We're going to go into a break shortly, but if you had to summarize the difference in those two styles, especially for people who are not so familiar with music, how would you summarize them, Nuno?
So for example, in the Sansa sonata, in the sonata from Sansa, it's easy to follow. It's easy melodies, you know. So it's challenging for bassoon in order that we have to be with a constant blow, you know. But it's easy melodies, so it's easy to get into your ears. Yeah, more romantic.
Something that people might remember when they leave the concert hall?
Hopefully.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but our guests today are Li Qi and Nuno Azevedo.
Again, perfect.
Thank you. We're talking about their upcoming recitals throughout Taiwan. You're listening to Resonance Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.
亲爱的朋友，您还在吸烟吗？快拿着健保卡到戒烟门诊，或拨打戒烟专线0800636363。提醒您，最近兴起的电子烟、加热烟，因为没有浓浓的烟臭味，就被认为无害。其实已经证实，新兴烟品都有二手烟及三手烟的危害，甚至还有爆炸的风险。我是义工蔡依林，所有烟品都 get out。我拒烟，我骄傲。
我是指挥中心疫情监测组组长周志浩。校园请落实防疫措施，请家长注意，孩子发烧或身体不舒服时，赶快就医，并且在家休息。也请大家共同配合，保持教室通风，使用空调时对角要各开一扇窗。餐点分配请由固定人员执行。打赛前请量测体温、清洁双手、佩戴口罩。搭乘学生交通车或大众运输时，也请记得佩戴口罩。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
家己电台家己主持咧。大家好，我是郭文铁，我伫台北广播电台。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
当家？我当家？你当家？我当家？到底谁当家？你来当家。
Welcome back to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Our special guests today are Ellen Lee, Li Qirui, and Nuno Azevedo, musicians who will be performing throughout Taiwan in the coming weeks. Ellen, up-and-coming pianist, and an up-and-coming bassoonist. Is that the correct term?
Exactly.
Okay. Before the break, we were talking about one of the upcoming performances, which is Panghuang Shidai. Did I get it correct?
Yes.
But before we talk more about Panghuang Shidai, tell us a little bit about the music that was playing during the break, Ellen. That was some of your past performances, wasn't it?
Yes, so the piano performance was actually in 2019. Was also in Taipei. Was the song from Schubert, the Austrian composer, but was a transcription to piano. So originally for voice and piano, but was transcribed from by Franz Liszt to piano solo. And the title is in German is Auf dem Wasser zu singen, so that would make it singing on the water.
Is there a Mandarin name as well?
Yeah, 在水上歌唱. Yeah, it's based on also poetry.
Yeah. Who else will be playing with you at Panghuang Shidai?
So the program is like this. The first half I will be playing solo. That is one, and then the second half, the beginning of the second half, I will play with Nuno. That was a duo, that makes it two. So it's 1, 2, 3. And then the third is with a trio with oboe, bassoon, and piano. So the oboist is Xie Wanzhen. She's a very prominent oboe player in Taiwan. And she also studied in Germany, actually. So actually a lot of ideas of us align very well.
Nuno, is it common for bassoonist and an oboist and a pianist to make a troika, or is this an unusual arrangement?
It is getting more usual and usual. We have some great program, for example, Pulang, one of the pieces we're going to play, and it fits very well. We are both from the double reed family, so the sound that comes out of our instruments comes by the vibration of this wood pipe, that wood piece that we have in the tip of the instrument, yeah. So our instruments are from the same family. So woodwind instruments, double reed. So it's a family that fits quite well, I think.
And fits well with the piano.
Also with the piano is always great for us.
Everything fits the piano. Ellen, tell us about the other part of the series of recitals, Shidai Huanxiang.
Yeah. So Shidai Huanying, what I really wanted to emphasize there was the contrast between pre-modern time. It's from Schubert, who I just mentioned earlier. He's an Austrian Viennese classical composer, and I was in 1 century before all these, so it's 19th century. And then I wanted to make a contrast with postmodern, that is pieces from the 1970s, from the 1990s, which are also important repertoire for the bassoon, isn't it right?
Yes, sure. So for us, for my instrument, for bassoon, so bassoon was very famous in the Baroque era, and then during the classic and romantic lost a bit of fame. So composers were not writing so much for it. And then at this time, so bassoon developed the mechanic of the instrument. So developed, started to work on it, and the instrument got much more capable. So a lot of keys came. Now bassoon is one of the instruments with more keys. So we have around 21 keys. Just for the thumb we have 11 keys. So of course, and then made possible much more development also in our repertoire. So for example, if in the first concert Sansa explored beautiful melodies that hopefully stay in the mind of the listeners, so the second half we have Roger Boutry, a very modern composer. Then we have again a clash between the first and the second half. So if in the first half we have Schubert,
I think the audience could expect the first half of very serene, elegant music, and then the second half comes the jazzy bassoon, the jazzy style of music. So we'll have 2 different kinds of mood in one concert.
Would you say that the 时代欢迎 is also for uncertain times, or was the motivation for the somewhat different?
So 欢迎, I mean, I mainly meant with Schubert, because that's a sonata that is gonna last for the whole first half. It's a very important program for me personally. So that is like the ghost of Schubert. And also the 2 composers in the second half, it's kind of in memory to them, because they when I was planning when we were planning the program, they both just passed away some month earlier. Was in 2019. So that's what I wanted to mean by that, by 时代欢迎.
And why do you think these selections for both the 彷徨 and the 欢迎, why do you think these selections will be popular with audiences in Taiwan?
Well, I think also as musicians, we also have the kind of the responsibility not just to play the popular things that people are familiar with, but also to present them a program that may not be so well known, but they are also very beautiful and very worth to be known, in my opinion. I think actually most part of the program is not that well known, but I don't really think that, for instance, Beethoven Pathétique needs to be played many more times, because of course it's a beautiful piece, but I think we are so many musicians, and I chose for this time to do a different job.
Nuno, what's your view on that? Do you think your selections are going to be familiar to the audience in Taiwan, or you are actually bringing to them maybe something they're unfamiliar with?
Probably unfamiliar. That's usually the feeling I have when people listen to the bassoon. As I told you before, one of the things that please me the most is to surprise the audience, even when I was involved in the school more often. So it was really a lot of fun when I would finish the concert, and even my colleagues would get surprised by the choice of program I had. So it's what I expect. Of course, it's going to be my second concert in Taiwan, so I'm not so familiar with the audience, but it's what I expect. I expect to surprise them, and to that when they go home, they go with a nice picture of what happened in the previous hour.
Actually, I had that experience, because we came to play together partly because of that, because I was also not that familiar with the bassoon, but I went to his master graduation concert, and I got very impressed and positively surprised, and since then we started to play together.
You never told me that.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm so glad you came on the show to talk about these surprises. Speaking of say you mentioned Nuno's performance for his graduation that you attended, and we've been talking about some of your past and upcoming recitals. But Ellen, you've also participated in a lot of competitions. In fact, you've won a lot of awards. And congratulations.
Thank you.
What about going forward? Do you think you're going to enter more competitions, or do you just want to perform and bring new music to audiences? What do you see on your schedule, or what's more important for you?
The most important for me is to share the music to the audience. But I do think that competitions are important for my own musicians' development and motivation. But to be honest, I don't quite agree with the concept of competition, because I think music, when it reaches a certain level, is very abstract and becomes very subjective. It's not like a sprinter that you know exactly who got there first. It's a different. So I personally don't fully agree with the concept of competition, but for musicians, I think competitions are a good experience to have if we enter with the right mindset. And I'm not ruling out competitions. I believe I will still attend some competitions, but I want to be ready for that mentally, because I think it can be very destructive for musicians that enter 10 competitions without any kind of outcome and constantly getting criticized, because we also get feedback from that. And I think our mentally is very important, also a very important part of also our performances. I think any people in performance, be it sport or performance arts, the mental training is also worth to be invested in, because what we believe in ourselves it really matters in the outcome of the performance.
How about you, Nuno? What's your view on competitions versus performing to really spread the joy of music and the knowledge of music to wider audiences? What about you for your own personal future? What do you see as taking up more of your time?
Well, I always prefer more performance other than competition. So as Ellen said, I also believe that competition is very abstract, and if we don't go with the right mindset, we can come destroyed out of it. As I know many of colleagues, musicians, that they stop to play, because they got wrong feedback, and that destroyed their life. They need to quit to play the instrument. So I cannot believe on that. Of course, I see, and this I learned also in Germany, that the competition is good for our own development. So when we finish the competition, doesn't matter if we are out in the first round or if we won the first prize, we are going to be playing better than when we started to prepare it. And I think this is the best. It's important for our personal development.
We've discussed your upcoming performances here in Taiwan and some of your past experience with performing around the world in competitions, but neither of you have mentioned yet your own compositions. Do either of you write music?
Well, writing down, but I do enjoy to sometimes improvise a bit with him, but privately. I don't know if they're okay to be published. What do you think?
I don't think so. But I have interest, and as I told you, like the bassoon is now in development, so we are also in a search for new program. And of course, I'm very open-minded and looking forward to work with the composers, really professional composers that are willing also to explore the instrument. And this is of course one thing to do in the future.
So Ellen, it sounds like in order to compose your own music, you'd have to sort of lock yourself back up in the mountains and just hide away for a while.
Get inspirations from the frogs.
From the frogs. Well, I'm not sure what kind of sound that would create if that's the vision you went for. How can people learn more about both of you? Do you maintain Facebook or Instagram or YouTube pages, or you just want people to come to the concerts and maybe just download one of your performances or buy a CD? People my age, we bought CDs because I'm a little older than you guys. Maybe you remember them. They're these thin, silver-looking things.
Yeah.
Where would you want people to go to learn more about you?
So I try to be I'm pretty active on Facebook. I have a Facebook page under my name. It's Li Ellen Lee. And actually, nowadays we have been promoting the concert with the live streams of introduction of those programs that we're gonna play. Nuno also appeared on the fan page, so also there people can get information about the program. And Instagram as well, I'm under the name Ellen Chi-Ray Lee. That's my Instagram. I also post some of my clips of playing there, and the website is in development now.
How about you, Nuno?
I think the best way is to come to the concert. But I'm also not very active, but I try sometimes to post stuff in Facebook, mainly in Facebook, and Instagram also, and yeah, that's it. But I think still the best is the concert.
So, okay, you said the best is the concert, but what about your friends and family back home in Portugal and in Germany, where you also studied for a while? Are you going to live stream your performances in Taiwan for everyone back home?
Hopefully we can post it when we get the recordings, but not with live stream. I think this time no live stream. No.
No.
So I will eventually post the final result of the concerts.
You didn't invite them to come over here to Taiwan, where fortunately we're relatively safe from the COVID-19.
I wanted very much to bring my parents, but unfortunately because of the restrictions and they would have to do quarantine, miss 2 weeks. Probably 1 month of work was not possible at the end.
Well, you could have played music for them while they're in quarantine.
I think they would get tired of the bassoon, if they are not out yet.
Give us the dates of the upcoming shows and the venues.
So in 2nd of March, we'll be playing at 7:30 p.m. at the National Concert Hall in Taipei. And on the 3rd of March, we'll be playing in Kaohsiung Weiying Concert Hall. That will be the first series of the program. So 2nd of March will be the second series, now with the 时代幻影. But 3rd of March will be 彷徨时代. And you want to go on, or shall I keep going?
You are doing it well.
So on the 6th of March, I believe. Yeah, 6th of March will be again in Kaohsiung Weiying Concert Hall with the second series of the program. And also in Taichung, we'll be playing the National Taichung Theater in the Zhongjuyuan on the 29th
and 28th
and 31st.
31st, yeah.
I think. Yeah, that's right.
And what's the best way for people to buy tickets?
So in my fan page, if they would be so kind to go to my fan page, Li Qi-Rui Ellen Lee, I have a link there, and almost every post nowadays I also put the link there.
Okay. Anything else you guys would like to tell our audience about your upcoming performance or the development of classical music in Taiwan?
I think classical music is actually quite simple, because I hear often, I think Nuno as well, people saying, I want to listen, but I don't really understand it. But I don't think that's necessary. I think to listen to music, all you need is open mind and imagination and a mood to enjoy some music.
Hey, Nuno, what Ellen just said was so profound. It was so deep. It's going to be really difficult to follow up on that, but
yes, sir.
You're going to have to try and follow up.
Okay.
Tell us something, a final thought that you want to leave the audience with about your music, the bassoon, or music in Taiwan that you've observed in your short time here.
Well, so far I just had one concert, and it was a big pleasure for me. Also, I had the opportunity to talk a bit with the audience, and this, I would say, that is so far the big difference I find between, for example, Germany and Taiwan. The audience is very warm, so I can feel that I was being very well received, and talking to them at the end, even being on the stage, that was very good. And apart of that, I want to tell you that I totally agree with Ellen. It's very important for me that that you finish a full day of work and you can come to a beautiful concert hall, sit in a comfortable chair, and just enjoy for 1 hour. That you go with peaceful mind state back home. So it's what we are working hard for that, and is what we want to invite people to come, and it's going to be a big pleasure for me. I'm sure also for Ellen to be in contact with all of them.
Well, thank you for ending our show on such a optimistic and happy note about music, and encouraging people to listen to music, and that classical music is not complex. It's accessible to everyone. Our guests today have been Ellen Lee, Li Qi-rui. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ross.
And Nuno Azevedo.
Again, fantastic.
Thank you. And more information is available on Li Qi-rui's fan page about their upcoming shows throughout Taiwan. You've been listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.